Gathering herbs in the rain, life in a peaceful forest. The sky over the valley had been the color of a dove's wing since dawn, a soft, muted gray that promised a day of stillness. When the rain finally arrived, it wasn't a storm, but a fine silver mist that settled over the forest like a secret. Inside the cottage, the air smelled of dried lavender and the faint toasted scent of the wood stove. In the kitchen, the day began with the rhythmic sound of a ceramic burr grinder. The coffee beans cracked and crumbled, releasing an earthy aroma that seemed to wake up the corners of the room. There was no rush. The water in the heavy iron kettle began to murmur, a low simmer that gradually climbed to a cheerful whistle. Pouring the water was a slow ritual, watching the steam rise in translucent ribbons, swirling around the hanging bundles of dried rosemary and thyme that swayed slightly in the draft. Beside the window, a small tabby cat stretched until its claws gripped the rug, letting out a silent yawn before curling back into a tight ball of orange fur. The rain tapped against the glass, a gentle, percussive song that made the inside of the house feel twice as warm. "The mint will be vibrant today," a soft voice remarked. Breakfast was a simple affair of thick-cut bread toasted over the stovetop flame and a jar of plum preserves from last summer. The spoon made a clean clink against the side of the glass. The jam was deep purple, tasting of sunshine and old memories. Every bite was a quiet celebration of the harvest that came before. After the dishes were rinsed, the water splashing softly against the porcelain sink, it was time to prepare for the forest. Donning a wax canvas coat and a wide-brimmed hat, the transition from the warmth of the hearth to the cool breath of the porch was a sudden, refreshing change. The forest didn't look wet so much as it looked deeply hydrated. The moss on the stone walls had turned a brilliant, neon emerald, drinking in the moisture. Walking down the dirt path, the mud made a satisfying, muffled squelch under heavy boots. The forest was breathing. You could hear it in the way the droplets hit the broad leaves of the sycamores patter, plink, tap. It was a symphony of small sounds. The herb garden sat at the edge of the woods, where the cultivated earth met the wild tangles of the thicket. Today was for the hardy things. Bending down, the soil felt cool and crumbly. Using a pair of old iron shears, the first task was the sage. Step. The silvery green leaves were velvety to the touch, beaded with tiny globes of rainwater that rolled off like mercury. Next came the thyme, its woody stems giving off a sharp, clean fragrance as they were tucked into a woven willow basket. There is a specific peace found in foraging in the rain. The world feels smaller, more intimate. There are no distant sounds of engines or shouting, only the sigh of the wind through the pines and the occasional flutter of a bird's wings as it finds shelter in the holly bushes. Further into the trees, near the bend in the creek, the wild lemon balm grew in abundance. The creek itself had risen, its voice a steady, rushing gargle over smooth river stones. Kneeling by the bank, the dampness seeping through the knees of the trousers was a reminder of being part of the landscape, not just an observer of it. The lemon balm was gathered by the handful, its citrus scent cutting through the heavy, wet smell of decaying leaves and pine needles. Back at the cottage, the porch served as a transition space. The wet coat was hung on a wooden peg, and the boots were left by the door, their solace caked with the dark, rich history of the forest floor. Inside, the house felt like a hug. The wood stove had burned down to a steady, pulsing orange glow. The basket of herbs was placed on the heavy oak table, and the afternoon's work began. This was the time for preservation. Taking a seat on a stool, the process of stringing the herbs was a meditative task. A spool of rough twine sat on the table. Taking a few sprigs of sage, a length of twine was wrapped tightly around the stems, tied with a simple knot, and looped. Twist, tie, snip. The motion became a rhythm. One by one, the green bundles grew into a row of potential. They would hang from the rafters, drying slowly over the coming weeks. their essence concentrating until they were ready to flavor winter stews or be steeped into healing teas. As the afternoon deepened, the light turned a dusty blue. It was time for a chore of a different sort. From a wooden crate in the pantry, a handful of beeswax blocks were retrieved. They were hard and smelled faintly of honey and summer meadows. A small pot was placed on the stove, and the wax was broken into pieces, the crack of the blocks echoing in the quiet room. As the wax melted into a golden liquid, a few drops of the freshly bruised herbs were added oil of lavender and a bit of the lemon balm. The scent that filled the kitchen was intoxicatingly clean. This was the making of candles for the long evenings ahead. Pouring the liquid gold into small glass jars, the wicks were held steady with clothespins. It was a slow process requiring a steady hand and a quiet mind. Watching the wax slowly turn from translucent gold to an opaque, creamy white was like watching time itself solidify. While the candles set, the evening meal began its slow journey toward the table. A heavy cast iron pot was brought out. Chipping vegetables was another song, thud of the knife against the wooden board. Carrots, onions, and potatoes, all dusty with the earth they grew in. They were tossed into the pot with a splash of oil, sizzling softly as they met the heat. A few of the fresh herbs gathered only an hour ago were tossed in, their vibrant green contrasting against the pale vegetables. While the stew simmered, filling the house with a savory, comforting fog, there was time for the smallest of joys. A letter was started on a piece of cream-colored paper. The fountain pen scratched softly, a tiny rhythmic sound like a cricket in the grass. The rain has stayed all day, the ink flowed, and the forest feels like it is dreaming. I spent the morning with the sage and the lemon balm, and now the house smells of honey and herbs. Later, the family gathered as the shadows grew long. There was no need for loud music or bright lights. A single lamp was lit, casting a warm, amber circle over the table. The stew was served in wide, shallow bowls that warmed the palms of the hands. Bread was torn by hand, the crust crackling. "Did you hear the owls near the creek?" One asked, their voice low and gentle. "Not yet," came the reply. "But the creek is loud today. It's happy for the drink." They ate slowly, the conversation drifting like the steam from their bowls. It was a dialogue of simple things, the health of the vegetable patch, the way the light hit the hills at noon, the book someone was currently reading. There was an ease in the silence between words, a comfort born of long years and shared rhythms. After the meal, the ritual of the evening tea began. This time, it was a blend of chamomile and the last of the dried peppermint. As the tea steeped, the table was cleared, the crumbs swept away with a small brush. One person took up a basket of mending, the needle weaving in and out of a wool sweater with practiced grace. Another sat by the fire, a book held open by a thumb, the pages turning with a soft paper rasp. The cat, now awake, paced through the room before leaping onto a lap, settling in with a deep, vibrating purr that could be felt as much as heard. The rain continued outside, a constant, loyal companion to the evening. It washed the world clean, tucking the trees and the moss into a deep, watery sleep. Before bed, a hot bath was drawn in the clawfoot tub. A handful of the leftover herbs and a scoop of sea salt were tossed into the water. The steam was fragrant and heavy, relaxing every muscle that had worked in the garden and the woods. Sinking into the water, the world outside, the forest, the rain, the coming winter seemed far away, yet perfectly in harmony with the warmth of the moment. Drying off by the fading heat of the stove, the house was finally hushed. The last of the candles was blown out, the wick glowing red for a heartbeat before vanishing into the dark. The smell of honey and sage lingered in the air. Climbing into bed, the sheets were cool and smelled of wind-dried linen. The sound of the rain on the roof was the last thing heard, a steady, rhythmic lullaby that promised a tomorrow just as peaceful as today. The forest was at rest, the herbs were drying in the rafters, and the heart was full of the quiet golden warmth of a life lived slowly.